Take a look at the middle of your screen. A Chicago alderwoman swarmed by a group of protesters angry over a plan to house migrants in Brighton Park. Now at 4, Mayor Brandon Johnson condemns the protesters' actions, calling them unconscionable.
Okay, so for today's video, we're going to be talking about none other than Chicago again. More and more news and videos are coming out from Chicago. The migrant crisis is getting pretty crazy. And as you could see from the opening video there, one of the alderwomen and the constituents of her ward are not happy with what's going on and ended up swarming her, kind of berating her with their signs and just yelling about how they felt about the whole situation. And I'm going to be playing the rest of that clip now.
Chicago wants to help, but we don't have the resources to help.
This was the message at 38th and California this morning.
We felt very stabbed in the back.
The lack of transparency surrounding the proposed migrant tent base camp in Brighton Park has neighbors feeling blindsided. CBS 2 broke the news of the camp possibly coming to 38th and California last Friday. In almost a week's time, construction has ramped up.
What about our immigrants that have been here?
Alderwoman Julia Ramirez offered to host a community meeting next Tuesday. This protest was organized much sooner, reaching a boiling point as Alderwoman Ramirez came to address constituents. Quickly, she was swarmed by people. Her staff members shielded her as the crowd grew. Police joined them as the shouting continued. In a statement, the alderwoman later said, quote, "It became clear that most of the protesters did not want to engage in a peaceful dialogue." Finally, police were able to escort her and her staff member away. The aide she was with went to the hospital for treatment.
Reading more from the alderwoman's most recent statement, she's calling on the mayor's office for, quote, transparency, accountability, and more local involvement in the decision-making process about all of this. As we've reported and have heard from multiple aldermen, the final decision on where the tents go is ultimately that of Mayor Johnson. In the newsroom, Sabrina Franza, CBS 2 News.
Now, obviously, I feel like there's other tactics that these people could have used to, talk to her, address their concerns, let them know how they really feel. Clearly, these people feel like they haven't been heard. They're kind of being blindsided. A lot of the signs said they didn't even know about this. They all heard about a lot of these decisions from the media, from the news. So it sounds like not even the aldermen and women of those wards are talking to their constituents, which is a big problem. However, it did say that the final decision does come down to Mayor Brandon Johnson, and also that he condemned what happened to that alderwoman. Now, again, I also agree. I don't think that what had happened to her was the appropriate answer. However, this is a guy who goes on the news and says, let's not demonize these children, these young scholars. Let's not paint them in a negative light. These people need more help, more resources. When he's talking about all the crimes that these young children and young teens and young kids are committing throughout the city over and over and over again, yet never comes out and condemns any of that. Always kind of backpedal, somehow twist it, saying like the media is depicting them in a negative light. If you're not from Chicago, don't talk about Chicago issues and Chicagoans. It's like just baffling that this man is the mayor. And again, these people are getting what they voted for. They all voted him in. Yet I'm sure they never thought it would get to a point where migrants have now superseded, regular residents. Now, this clip here that I want to play is about 3 weeks old. But I think this video will show a lot of the mental gymnastics that these politicians are willing to go through, paint this picture of like righteousness or something like that for people who in the end can't vote for them or have no power to keep these people in power, yet they continue to ignore the people that can keep them in power. So without further ado, let's get into this one.
So Republicans' biggest criticism of the bipartisan Senate spending bill, this compromise that's being worked over on the other side of Capitol Hill, is that it does not contain additional funding for border security. Right now, the U.S. is facing a crisis at the border and this historic wave of Venezuelan migrants crossing into the U.S. The U.S. cannot deport most of them, or any of them really, because of the frosty diplomatic relations with Venezuela. More than 7.7 million people have fled Venezuela. There's no sign this is slowing down. Do you agree that something needs to be done about our border, that it's just not sustainable? I mean, we see, these governors, and I'm sure you disapprove of the tactic, but they're sending migrants into places like Massachusetts, like New York, not like California.
Now, again, if you're unfamiliar with what Jake Tapper's talking about, the border states like Texas and all them, they've been dealing with this migrant crisis for months, if not years now. And, all these places like Massachusetts, New York, Chicago, all claim to be sanctuary cities. They say, yeah, we welcome migrants. We should let them all in. But they weren't the ones dealing with them. And now places like Texas have decided, you know what? Let's throw them on a coach bus. You guys are sanctuary cities. You guys want the migrants. Here you go. Here you can deal with what we've been dealing with for months on months on months. And now these places are starting to feel what it's like to have to deal with these people on a daily basis. The numbers just keep ramping up and ramping up and ramping up. It's becoming very unsustainable. But just listen to what she has to say with this smug look on her face.
And these cities are having trouble keeping up. The Republican governors say things like, we're just giving you a taste of what we have to deal with.
Well, I certainly disagree with any people, and certainly our most vulnerable who are fleeing great destabilization and violence and corruption from being used as political pawns. No doubt about it, our border is secure, and we're in the midst of a humanitarian crisis, and we have.
I just want you to take a second to look at Jake Tapper's face there as soon as she says that. The reaction that he has.
From being used as political pawns. No doubt about it, our border is secure, and we're in the midst of a humanitarian crisis, and we have to fix a broken system.
Wait,
and we also
you think it is secure? You think the border is secure, or it is not secure?
I believe that we are in the midst of a humanitarian crisis, and there needs to be federal investment to support those migrant families. And I work with a number of those community-based organizations on the ground, and they need more support. They need more federal support. This is a humanitarian crisis.
And again, she's just throwing out this word salad, trying to pick point words that buzzwords, humanitarian crisis. We need more federal, these people have families and they're suffering and this, and they're escaping, they're seeking asylum. Like, it's just this word salad and rhetoric that she's trying to push that'll play at people's heartstrings and kind of distract them from the actual problem. And Jake Tapper, I give him kudos because he continues to push back on that specific point that the border is secure, that she keeps saying.
And it's the consequence of a number of longstanding broken policies that are very consequential for asylum seekers, TPS holders, and DACA recipients writ large. But that is a conversation for another day.
Of course,
I don't disagree with this being a humanitarian crisis at all. But just to get some clarity on this, and sure, that's a conversation for another day. But do you think that the border is secure? Is that what you said?
Yes, the border is secure. And we're in the midst of a humanitarian crisis that has been created by a broken system. And in the meantime, we need federal investment to support my constituents and those who call the MA7th home writ large, which is why we need to prevent a government shutdown. I want to center the humanity, the dignity, the safety, and the needs of everyone, which is why we should not have a government shutdown. It will be deeply consequential. It will create a dire situation for families,
like you're not
many
in one
that are
already.
already struggling.
But if you have millions of undocumented migrants coming into the country, how is the border secure?
Jake, this is not a new crisis. It does require more political will and commitment. It is a human.
Did you hear that? It requires more political will, as if that's all we really need. His face alone, right here, says it all. He's just looking at her like, are you for real? Are you saying what you're saying right now with a straight face?
Humanitarian crisis. We should treat it as such. And again, representing one of the most diverse constituencies in the country. And in fact, I chair the House Haiti Caucus. I represent the third largest Haitian diaspora in the country. And what I see on the ground is community-based organizations and municipalities who need federal support.
I'm not disagreeing with anything you're saying, except for the idea that the border is secure. I mean, if you have people crossing the border, it's just by definition not secure. If you have people coming to the United States, in fact, I mean, one of the arguments being made, and I think it's an argument worth considering, is that because our border is so porous, millions of people make this very unsafe journey. Millions of people give money to people who prey on them, coyotes, and take them on these journeys to cross into the United States, preying on them, vulnerable people. And that's because the border is not secure. Because it is not secure, they go on this journey. And one of the arguments that is made, and maybe you disagree with it, is that the border should be secure so as to discourage people from making this journey.
Crazy concept.
So that if people want to try to come to the United States and declare asylum and seek asylum, they go through the proper
channels,
corridors,
and
not just try to cross illegally. But it just seems like just such a refusal to acknowledge reality, just to say that the border is secure when we all know millions of people are crossing the border illegally every year.
And she just sits here this whole time with this smug little smile on her face. And again, this is somebody that was voted into power, yet will refuse to acknowledge everything that he's saying and just simply say, this is a conversation for another time. It's very sensitive, blah, blah, blah. Like,
Jake, and that is a consequence of a number of things. We have climate refugees, people that have been disabled in regions that are destabilized by extreme weather events.
Sure.
We have people that are violence
none
and
of that
corruption.
matters to what he's
and
saying.
So we just have to acknowledge why someone would leave their native country and their family and risk so much. It is
100%.
because they are in pain. And asylum is a human right. And so we must do better and more by TPS holders, by DACA recipients and asylum seekers. And we must do more and better by those who already call this country home, who stand to really struggle if there is a Republican government shutdown that could have been avoided if the Republicans knew how to govern. But instead, they lead from a place of contempt, callousness, and cluelessness, and they continue to play to the most extreme parts of their base, political gamesmanship, playing with people's lives. And I'm not here for it. And that is also why, given how many people are struggling, I'm calling on the to not resume student loan payments October 1st if we are in a government shutdown.
Okay. It sounds like in there you acknowledged that there are millions of people crossing the border illegally, which would mean that the border is not secure. But I mean, I don't disagree with any of the points you made about these people are trying to seek better lives and they're escaping all sorts of horrible things. But would you grant me the point that the border is not secure?
Listen,
Jake, that is a conversation for another day. Right now, I'm squarely focused on preventing a government shutdown. And if there is one.
Now, as hilarious as I found that clip, the one thing that she does reiterate is these people seeking asylum. Now, there was a great video or portion of a video from a YouTube channel called Nate the Lawyer, who actually kind of explains how these people technically aren't seeking asylum. And here's his take on that.
So let's talk about what's happening. Why has this border crisis gone from something that was manageable under the Trump administration to something that's just totally unworkable under the Biden administration? Let's talk about the facts. So during the Trump administration, the policy that administration enacted stated that migrants who traverse through another country before reaching the United States were automatically deemed ineligible for asylum. Now, the perspective here was that if an individual was fleeing one country for asylum and had already found refuge in a different country, then their primary need for asylum had already been fulfilled. Therefore, leaving that intermediary country to come to the United States was not seeking asylum, but rather a preference for the United States. Now, the Trump administration also required asylum seekers to wait in Mexico for their U.S. immigration hearing. Now, Biden changed all that. See, Biden stopped the Trump administration's policy of requiring migrants to wait in Mexico and allowed early entry into the United States to await hearing. Biden also allowed migrants to pass through the other countries, and when they got here to the United States, they could present a rebuttable presumption of ineligibility. This allowed them to come to the United States and argue why they didn't remain in the country they passed through or they found asylum in, instead coming to the United States. So, for instance, if you were coming from Venezuela, you made it to Mexico, your asylum needs are essentially met, and you'd have to go to court and say, well, hey, why did you stay in Mexico? Why are you coming to the United States? You've already got asylum. And Biden also allowed exceptions for children. Now, Biden's policy led to an explosion in migrants. Asylum seekers were entering the U.S. at record numbers. Border states like Texas and Arizona were especially hit hard with migrants who were just coming and saying, hey, we want asylum.
Now, to me, seems very clear, concise. These people technically should not be coming through, and if they do want to come through, then they should be following the proper channels or corridors, as Jake was mentioning. And I just wanted to end this video by showing a little bit of a very recent video that was just released by our buddy Peter that we've watched a few videos on, and he is with an ex-Chicago cop who basically lays all of this out as well. The video is an hour and I think a half. I've only just started it, but it's already really good. I'll put the link down below, but here's a little small clip from that video.
At the end of the day, this is not the answer. And there are resources. They've even got federal money that came in. CBS was trying to FOIA to see exactly where the money was spent, and the city's blocking them and refusing to answer the FOIAs because they don't want to say where the money went. Millions and millions of dollars. So it's frustrating. They should be able to take care of both. Yeah. You know, and the amount of migrants that are coming in here, I don't know what we're up to now. Let's just go crazy and say we're up to 30,000 migrants. Mm-hmm. How many are coming into Texas every day?
Oh, those towns are getting hammered.
So we're a sanctuary city, and it was all well and good because the politicians love that talking point. We're a welcoming city. We're a sanctuary city. It was all good as long as they weren't coming here. But as soon as they came, it's like, oh, they're terrible down there. They're using them as pawns, this and that and everything. It's because they want the talking points and they want to be able to say that they care, but they don't want to do anything when it's at their front door.
Now they have to deal with the problem.
Now they have to deal with the problem.
It's a little more complicated.
And the problem is, so their ideas are fine. We're gonna displace the homeless.
I saw it in McAllen, Texas. McAllen, Texas, right near the border.
Yeah.
The homeless got kicked out of the shelter and the migrants took over. And there was a contract with that and there's money to be made.
100%.
Unfortunately.
Yep.
So at the end of the day, everybody's seeing what we're all seeing, and it's starting to slowly become acknowledged, and people are pushing back and people are very tired. Hopefully we can get these corrupt, people out of power, people that actually need the help and the resources and anything like that, get the help and resources that they need. And we're not just siphoning it off to random people who are showing up in the US and Canada and wherever else that they're crossing to get better lives. Again, it's not to say that these people don't deserve to get asylum or seek asylum or get better lives if they are in poor conditions. It's just rules and laws are made for a reason. There are borders for a reason, and those are what should be enforced. But as always, I'd love to hear from you guys, so please let me know in the comment section below what you guys thought. And as always, I will catch you on the next one. Thanks so much.